then just, it's probably going to say we're being recorded. No? Interesting. No legal issues there. Okay. So while the rest of you are trying to get on, the first few slides are just kind of the agenda and the objective and the overview. So it's not critical that you're on in the next minute and a half. But what I'm going to do today is take you through Axiom's integrated selling solution. And as you see there in parentheses, our learning solutions, and specifically how it relates to what you guys are trying to accomplish as an organization. And as a way of background, so that you guys understand Axiom and what we do, our objective in all of our client engagements, it's essentially the same thing. Our job is to help you dramatically improve sales performance through continuous learning and improvement. And really, it's about transformation in three areas of the business. So it's transforming how sales professionals engage with your prospects and your customers so that it not only produces a better financial result for Vantiv, but it also delivers greater value to your customers. And then it's really important, if we really truly want to improve sales performance, that managers or see sales results rather in a sustainable fashion, that the way in which salespeople are engaging with customers brings value to the customer and helps them make better, more informed decisions, more intelligent buying decisions. And then the second part of that transformation, which we kind of talked about a little bit already, is really about managers and coaching. And one of the things we've learned in our 23 plus years in the sales effectiveness and sales training space is that training people has relatively little effect if managers don't reinforce that in their daily interactions. So what we do is work to affect the change in how managers manage their people so that they're coaching them and giving them actionable things to do. So they really are reinforcing the process, whatever process you lead. So whether it's Axiom or somebody mentioned another group, it really makes no difference. I would give you some unsolicited counsel. If you're not going to heavily invest in a management and coaching solution, don't waste any money on training your salespeople. It's of no value. You're going to see maybe 2 out of 10 actually adhere to it because they're the ones that are always going to do what they're told no matter what. The rest of the people are going to go back to doing whatever's most comfortable for them. And then the last thing is it helps senior leaders transform the way in which they manage and measure success in its key business function. As a whole, sales leaders have a tendency to look at the final financial results, but they don't necessarily talk to or see or have visibility into the behaviors that are driving what's actually happening. So we need to make sure that the senior leaders have the ability to measure and manage those key business functions. And just so you know, there's a number of companies we do this for today. You see just a few of those up there. AT&T is one of our largest clients. We are the Salesforce development partner for them worldwide, nearly 9,000 people in their sales organization. Verizon Wireless, where we're also responsible for their day-to-day sales transformation. As a matter of fact, very exciting. You'll see the Salesforce applications that are integrated with our solution. We just signed the new contract with Verizon Wireless last week for 4,000 licenses. We don't sell Salesforce.com. Our applications reside natively in Salesforce.com. That's the relationship, which is why we're talking to you. Quite frankly, if you guys weren't a Salesforce.com customer, we wouldn't be talking to you. And I'll explain that a little bit later. So the objective here is to get you guys all the information you need. So if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'm not looking at the GoToMeeting chat icons. I'm talking to the guys here in the room for those of you on the call. So if you have a question, I would ask those that, James, it looks like you're on. If you see something pop up, just stop me, or just don't hesitate to just guys on the phone, just say, hey, I have a question. So there are a number of items we want to talk about today, and we're going to do a pretty quick level set on how it is that the most effective sales organizations really deliver exceptional performance. Then that traditional approach that's been taken historically to driving improved sales effectiveness, and then Axiom's new selling solutions approach and how that differs from the traditional approach. So then we'll demonstrate a couple of the key applications for you guys today so you can see how it all works together. And then, of course, we'll have a Q&A session at the end, as well as any time during the process here. So as a starting point, what you see up on the screen right now is a very simple formula that it's actually the mathematical formula for sales success. So sales success can be expressed by a simple point of activity times proficiency equals sales. And guys, this, by the way, is the sales success formula, if you will, for any production environment. So sales on one hand, James.
Is there a question? I heard somebody on the phone. Sorry.
All right. So sales on one hand is a production job. So if you guys were running a factory, it would be the raw materials that you bring in times the operating efficiency of your factory, which would give you the end results of the production that you're actually after and that you deliver. And in sales, we try to get ahead of it with Axiom with these key predictive metrics, if you will, and those are new opportunities and new proposals, the closing ratio, the proposal ratio, and the average sale value. And one of the things that we've observed in working with our clients over the past 2+ decades is that very few sales teams and even fewer individuals actually understand mathematically what they need to do in each of these areas in order to be successful as possible. And in fact, what happens is they don't actually have a personal sales success plan that will ensure that they're as effective as possible. So one of the things we do from the very beginning with our clients is show them the mathematical formula by which each person can have their own sales success plan. Everybody will know what they need to do in each of these areas, which means you can start predicting sales performance far more accurately and get ahead of the curve, which helps your managers and your coaches do better, and it helps the salespeople execute better, and in the end, it helps to transform the behavior and deliver on the overall Vantiv value proposition. One of the things we want to get away from is looking at salespeople who've missed their numbers, and Ken and I kind of talked about this a few minutes ago, getting people who have missed their numbers at the end of the month and telling them that, okay, that they already know. It's not strange to them that they missed their sales number. Trust me, every salesperson in your organization knows whether he or she's making their number. We do want to be able to identify when there are gaps in some of these predictive metrics and then address those gaps, hopefully even before they impact their sales performance. So that's the production part of the sales job. And it's important that we measure and track the right metrics. And I'll show you how we can use Salesforce.com to actually better build those success plans and then track these performance against those predictive metrics. It's interesting with these sales success plans. We met with years ago XO Communications, a large telecommunications carrier, and the guy was talking about at the end of the month, if the reps have missed their numbers, they put them on a PIP or a performance improvement plan. Now we knew what a PIP was, and you guys all know what PIPs are, but we kind of played dumb and we're like, well, what's a PIP? He said, well, it's a performance improvement plan. He said, well, tell me more. He said, well, if the rep misses their numbers, we put them on a plan where we tell them how many calls they need to make, how many opportunities they need to identify, how many proposals they need to generate, what their closing ratio needs to be, all these things you see on the screen. And he said, well, what happens? He said, well, almost every time their numbers go up. So he said, well, then why do you wait till they've failed to PIP them? He said, well, it's all punitive. And we said, well, that's because you wait till they've done something wrong to do it. So if you look at it from the perspective of a sales success plan, put them on it immediately. So Leslie, here's what you need to do in order to make your numbers. These are the very specific things. Now you don't have a performance improvement plan. You have a sales success plan that they can look to during the month, not after it's happened. So we want to make sure that they have this right up front. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, if we're going to drive sustainable sales success, is why is it if we create that plan, so if we identify what each person, each team must do in order to meet each of these predictive metrics over time, why would salespeople still fail to hit the targets? Why would they still struggle? And it boils really down to two things. It's either something going on in the environment, it's a competitive situation, or it's something disruptive that's happening in the marketplace, or it could be the economy, or it's their selling behavior. Now, not knowing how much experience you all have here, I'll share with you. I've been in sales myself more than 25 years now, and I've seen lots of environments, just lots of different environments. And what's always been fascinating to us is that in any given situation, if you think about it, there's always a winner and a loser. No matter what the environment I've seen, no matter what kind of product situation we have, no matter what kind of competitive situation we have, no matter what the economy, it seems that there's all these people selling the same thing to the same exact customers and prospects in the same environment, and some are succeeding and some are not, which means the key thing impacting sales performance, the key influencer here really is selling behavior, which, by the way, is great for all of us on this call because it's the only thing within our span of control. We can't necessarily change the selling environment, right? We can't change the competitive situation or landscape, but we can, in fact, continuously improve selling behavior. So as part of our job in the relationship with Vantiv, it would be to illustrate for your people the ideal selling behaviors. And some of those things you see there up on the screen in each of these key areas. So what does effective identification of new opportunities look like, whether it's being done with your existing customers or prospecting for new customers? What's the ideal behavior model look like? So what's the ideal model for qualifying those opportunities so that your people are working business they really can win, and more importantly, not wasting their time on things they wouldn't win, and equally important, understanding how to win the business they choose to pursue. So this is really the key. There's 4 ways to win or lose, and these are universal. You can win fast, you can win slow, You can lose fast or lose slow. Of those four, only one is not acceptable, and that's losing slow. If I win fast or win slow, either way I win. That's cool. If I lose fast, we believe that's a very good thing because what it does is allows me to get to something else in my funnel that I can work on. It's the death by 1,000 paper cuts where you've got a rep that's pushing something out in Salesforce every 30 days now for a year to keep his funnel full. So he's meeting the manager's obligations of have X amount of dollars in your funnel. And none of it's really business they can win. They're just playing the game. So we want to make sure that it's business we can win, and helping them qualify and identify opportunities better is an easy way to do that. So next, we want to make sure that when we're presenting the Vantiv solutions and the Vantiv value propositions being positioned as effectively as possible. And one of the things I'll point out here is we want to make sure that this is not just, especially as you guys get into the omni-commerce and the one Vantiv, that they're talking about, one rep may be talking about one solution in his presentation, but he needs to be able to represent, not necessarily as a subject matter expert, but as the trusted advisor of Vantiv to the customer when they're presenting the entire suite and be able to articulate that single conversation. Once again, not being the expert necessarily in each piece, but being able to articulate to the customer how they can integrate all of it into what they're trying to accomplish as an organization. And this comes into play in the presentation part of the process where we show them how to leverage your competitive advantages. So by creating the most compelling case possible, but here's the interesting thing. The most compelling case possible is the one that most closely resembles the customer's criteria, not necessarily what you want to sell them. And that's really what we have to get away from, is becoming product peddlers, because if that's the case, they're going to buy the cheapest product. If we all look the same, they're going to buy the cheapest same thing. So it's really integrating those two parts of the process together that allows us to really transform customer conversations and do a significantly better job of differentiating Vantiv in the marketplace. Now, you still have to do things like handle objections and negotiate. So obviously that's part of the core process and the methodology. And frankly, also in your environment, there's going to be a lot of complex opportunities. And complex opportunities where you have multiple people involved in the evaluation on the customer side, multiple people who need to be involved on the Vantiv side, and the ability for your sales teams to manage, especially as you start to become more one Vantiv, to elicit, share, and assimilate that information in an efficient manner across the entire organization. And then ultimately for some of your key accounts, some of the stuff Ken was talking about in the top 300 accounts, the ability for the team to manage those account relationships, grow those relationships, focusing on the customer and identifying more opportunities within the account becomes really key. So at the core of what we do at Axiom around these key selling behaviors, and we're going to spend some time today diving into those, but it's really about two things if you want to be successful in transforming your processes. One requires for Vantiv that you get a methodology that's executed on. So if your people become better and more proficient, it would in fact allow them to be more successful in that methodology and that process. And then the other is getting as many people, once you have that process, as proficient as possible within the organization at the process, right? So you can't just have a process that nobody uses, or in your case, you can't have multiple divisions doing multiple things, especially when you want to become one group. You have to have a process and a methodology that works, and then you have to have the ability to support it after the fact, getting them proficient at it. And so as you implement it, have a process and support that becomes as critical as the methodology itself. So, by way of evidence for you and the impact the methodology can have, and we've got tons of anecdotal evidence, but one of our largest customers actually commissioned an independent study. And by the way, this is something we do on an ongoing basis with most of our clients. We actually hire Western Michigan University here in the States to study the efficacy of the program. And we use Western Michigan in the States because at least here in the U.S., and I say in the States because we have a number of global clients, but in the U.S., they're considered the foremost authority on analyzing the impact these types of transformative or skill development programs have. So one of our clients actually hired a third party to come in and evaluate 18 months in, and they had several thousand reps go through all this. And over an 18-month process and time frame, they brought the company in. Strangely enough, it was the company that lost to us to do the impact study, so we were a little nervous. But the study showed that of their initial, and keep in mind, they have almost 9,000 reps, but of their initial $17 million investment, and also just so nobody's shaking in their seats, that was mostly travel, global travel for them. But in an 18-month period, they had a $325 million return on investment in new incremental revenue, and that was with only 25% adoption. Now, that's a phenomenal number, right? 17 million, 18 months, 325 ROI, but 25% adoption is not good. And what that validates is that whole point of within 30 days, the majority of the knowledge is gone. So even though that 25% had generated more than $300 million in revenue, we needed to figure out a better way to make that more applicable across the organization. And that's really what has driven us to where we are today. And the fact of the matter is billions of dollars are spent annually in an effort to do just what you guys are trying to do here, to drive improved sales performance, to help better people at your communicating and value proposition, to help the sales organization be more focused and more customer-centric. And the two key areas are training and technology. So in your case, Salesforce.com, but specifically tools within Salesforce.com to help them do their jobs better. You guys are leveraging a significant investment every month with Salesforce.com. And I would venture a guess that it's not being utilized nearly as well as you'd like it to be. Well, is I close there? So the question we have to ask ourselves is, in the traditional approach, does it really work? And frankly, the traditional approach is relatively disjointed. And it's not that companies don't try to make them work together, okay? It's not that they don't try to build connections, but here's what happens. You have training on one side who says, okay, we've made this multi-million-dollar investment into Salesforce.com. We need to make sure as we're rolling out the training for everything that we reference what fields they should put this stuff in the CRM tool and where they can go to do this. And then you've got the technology side and sales ops that says, well, we need to build some of the training methodology into the fields so that when they're in there, they see all the stuff that your team just taught them, but it's two separate investments. It's not that you're not trying to work together, but and I don't mean you specifically. You may have the greatest thing since sliced bread in terms of togetherness. Typically, that's not the case, though. The extent of it is when they're rolling out the program, they'll try to reference both, but they don't do it well. So what you start to see are some of the things up on the screen. Low adoption of both the methodology that you're being taught and the CRM solution itself. As a matter of fact, I think if you were to ask Mark Benioff, Salesforce's CEO, what his biggest issue is, he'd say user adoption. And if you ask any sales training company, any of the companies that are coming in to talk to you today, it's going to be low user adoption. So that's the biggest risk to the business, and it's the biggest risk to your investment. If you're going to do another flavor of the month or flavor of the year in terms of a new methodology, don't waste your money. It's not going to work. Especially in this economy. So all sales training companies are confident that if people use what they're taught, they'll get better. And this is also a significant, but the problem is it ties into what I talked about the classroom piece. They also know that they're going to lose a significant portion of that knowledge very quickly. So how do you do that? So we find that companies continue to be challenged with low adoption and high turnover in the sales force. I don't know how your turnover rates are, but it's one of the most expensive pieces in any sales organization, which of course is expensive not only for the business, but as you try to create that image of the omni-centric type scenario, it diminishes the relationship we have with our customers when we're constantly bringing in new people, and then you have missed targets, shrinking margins, lots of margin pressure, right? Because we begin to look like to our customer that we're selling a commodity opportunity rather than solutions that are specifically designed to solve the kinds of problems that they're experiencing in their business. And then inaccurate forecasts are a perennial problem in sales. In fact, CSO Insights, this is a true story. They just did a study in 2013 that said you're more likely to win at the craps table in Las Vegas than get an accurate sales forecast from your sales teams. True story. So low participation rate, poor customer satisfaction. So guys, overall, this traditional approach isn't working. What we need to do isn't to invest in each of these things separately and then try to get them to tie together. We need to bring them together from the get-go and deliver an integrated solution that simultaneously drives behavior for most learning and then helps your salespeople better deliver results. And that's what we've put together at Axiom. So before I continue, are there any questions yet? Should I just bring out the contract and have you guys sign it? Are we that good?
I'm not seeing anyone here.
Let's see.
You guys still with us?
I've got Jovino, Christine, Learning Development, and Megan. Oh, the J is silent.
No, it's H.
Oh, Jovino. Okay. From Brazil by chance?
Oh, Puerto Rico.
Okay. It was like the
I'm still here, yes.
I'm a big MMA fan, and the Gracies are Brazilian, and they're like royal family for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they all have J's in front of their name, but they're all H's. That's why I asked about Brazil. All right.
Voice. Latino.
Yes, Hoist Gracie, right? Yes. So, all right, you're good. So let me move on then. So the new model at Axiom, here's what we do. We still, by the way, do provide some classroom learning experiences, but we'll do it in a very different fashion than what we've been doing, and I'll describe that in detail in just a little bit. But as soon as somebody comes out of the classroom experience, whether it's from you guys or from us, they immediately go into a very leveraged, well-developed learning library of all the skills they just learned. And that's the thing you see in the upper left-hand corner. We show them, we want them to go straight into the learning library because once they leave that classroom in today's environment, they're not getting proficient at that. Jim.
Hey, Megan, are you on?
Yeah, I can still see it.
Okay, good. Because I pulled it up on Link too, so I don't know. Are you on Salesforce or on LinkedIn?
No, I couldn't. GoTo didn't work within the network, so I had to go outside the network. That might be why you can't see it.
Okay, but you're on. Got it.
Okay. All right. So, in fact, if you go back to the late 60s or 70s, when big corporations they started bringing salespeople in-house, because up until that time, salespeople were really kind of independent contractors. So companies like Xerox and IBM and AT&T would bring people in for an entire year of training, and that's a means to proficiency. But as we begin to cut budgets and shrink programs down to not years, but not months, and not months but weeks, and not weeks but days, we begin to realize that in the learning world, and this is all stuff you guys know, those objectives are no longer achievable. You can't get somebody proficient in days. It doesn't work. So we still needed to provide them with some sort of tool set and the right kinds of tools to get them proficient, but it had to be incrementally when they left the class. So at Axiom, we do that through our online learning portal. And it has two types of learning activities in it. You've got the, and by the way, these aren't repurposed PowerPoint slides from the in-person class. We have a whole neuroscience department that customizes this specifically for online learning. You've got really two challenges. You've got your millennial workforce that's getting greater and greater each day, and then you have the other side of the veterans, and both have challenges with online learning. Neither one of them want to sit through classes that are sitting on a computer. So we've really brought in a crack team to actually address both of those specific types of groups. Oops, something just popped up on my screen. So I think the longest learning activity that you'd have on the library is 25 minutes long. So it's very digestible, ingestible chunks of quick information. They're not sitting there for hours and hours and hours. So the people are being asked questions, they're being tested for their knowledge. And these two types of learning activities, you have the refresh learning that they get immediately as they go through, and they can actually then go back and be reminded of key concepts. So they're now sitting in front of the parking lot. They're about to go on a call where they know they're about to get beat up on a price. They've already been through the learning library, been certified. Now they can get on their tablet or their laptop. They can sit out in front of the customer's office, get on the online learning library, go through a quick 15-minute chunk on price negotiation, and then go into the meeting, just-in-time training, ready and persistent instead of an event-based type thing. And then the key concepts, they'll actually have practice simulations, case studies, all customized. And if somebody's going to apply the skill effectively, they've got to recognize when and how to do it. So we're going to have online practice activities for all of the methodology, from identifying opportunities to handling objections, negotiations, presenting, prospecting. All of that will be built into that. And it's all in an online learning library that's integrated directly into your Salesforce environment, as well as those other applications that you see up there. And then those three other applications, they align around the things we have to do effectively if you're going to have a high-performance sales organization. And if you think about it, the other three things you have to be able to do besides learn are manage opportunities effectively, you have to manage accounts effectively, and then you have to manage and coach people effectively. So at Axiom, we have these applications built in natively on the Force.com platform. So it's literally a plug-in to your Salesforce.com implementation, and it's designed for each of those key parts of your sales function. So they're not going to have to go anywhere else. And I'll show this to you live in just a second. And I'll show it to you quickly because we're running out of time. So what I want to talk about real briefly here is learning, because we don't necessarily propose you don't put anybody in classes, but we do propose a significant shift from that traditional approach to what happens in the classroom itself. And here's the big challenge from our perspective. When we talk about training and learning, we have to keep in mind that unless it affects behavior change, it's a complete waste of money. Okay? And it's a complete waste of time, and nobody wants to be out of the field if they're not going to get something out of it. So it's great if you send people to class and they love it and they think the instructors are exceptional and they have a good time. That's all well and good. But if you continue to engage customers in the same way, if you continue to have those disjointed, disparate conversations across the enterprise, if you continue to manage opportunities differently, manage accounts differently, and then managers continue to coach the way they're coaching, then we're not going to really get different results. So what we've done is really built a behavioral change model, and it's based on our experience of literally hundreds of thousands of different sellers over 23 years, how this came to be. And it's been observed, this isn't unique. It's been observed by lots of thought leaders around change and change management, personnel performance, right? So in order to sustain behavior change, there's certain things that need to happen. First thing you have to do is affect a change in belief. So if you're going to teach people a new way, for example, to qualify opportunities and to engage in developing criteria with customers, if you're going to work with them and show them how they can benchmark criteria that's actually aligned around Vantive's competitive advantages, if we're going to do that, then they have to believe that the new way is actually going to produce a different result in their behavior for them to want to do it once they leave the classroom. If they don't do that, if they don't believe that it's going to produce a better result, then they're not going to do the things necessary when they leave the class to become proficient. And at Axiom, as far as we know, we're the only company that actually designs our programs with that stated objective. Now, we refer to that as an ownership objective. And what I mean by that is we still have traditional learning objectives. We would say when James leaves the class, he will know. Or when you finish module 2, Leslie will be able to do X. We take it a step further and say, at the end of this module, Ovino will believe this is what he should do. Because if they don't walk out believing this is the right thing for them to do, maybe 2 in 10 are going to do it. The rest of them are going to go back to the old ways, which is what you're trying to solve the problem on. As a matter of fact, if we don't get that buy-in, you don't pay. It's a novel concept, but we believe if we don't hand you back people that believe this is the right thing for them to do, you shouldn't pay us for doing it. And by the way, this is so unique that when we exposed this, we actually shared it with trainingindustry.com. They invited us to do a webinar because trainingindustry.com had never heard of an ownership guarantee in the industry, especially when it comes to learning. How do you guarantee they're going to do this? So it comes from a recognition that training in and of itself is not valuable. And we're all in training, so I'm not trying to put us out of jobs. But if we don't work with the end result in mind, the training in and of itself has no value. It's only valuable when you and your people and your customers and the way in which they communicate with one another changes. And in fact, at Axiom, our view, frankly, is that our obligation extends past just you, past just your sales reps, past your sales leaders. Our obligation extends to your customers. And if we don't change the way in which the sales team engages with the customers, if it's just business as usual and doesn't achieve greater value, then we haven't achieved our objectives. And it's just, once again, a waste of time and money. So the next thing you see is the commitment. And the belief is the key part of any classroom instructor-led portion. But once we get that belief, then coaching is essential to that process, right? To leverage the newfound commitment, we also have to have things that people can do in order to convert that belief into behavior. And that's where the online learning becomes essential, so that everybody who leaves the class is put into, if you will, a learning track. And that learning track is something that they'll access directly from salesforce.com. And these learning tracks allow them to get incrementally better with the skills, a little piece each time, each week. And then the coaches know, and your leadership team knows, who's actually using the learning library, who's actually learning and becoming proficient with these skills. And their progress is being tracked so that you can see the degree to which change is really being effective. And this is actually very cool, because it used to be we would come in 6 to 8 months later, do an assessment, find out that your people may have a specific problem with a section in qualifying. Well, that's great. We've identified it now. It's 6 to 8 months later. Now we can, in near real time, because it's all online, see that not only are they having a problem with qualifying, but it's questions 7, 8, and 9 of this specific module 3, and we can change it in days, not months, and get your people back on track to be effective at what they're trying to do. So the tools that you have them with are critical. And then finally, we provide you with information that you can use to reward people. One of the biggest challenges in behavior change is that salespeople have, from the time in which they actually go through something till the time they become proficient with it, to the time they actually start using it in the field, can be exponentially long, and they lose interest if it's not helping them close sales quickly. So being able to reward them for the learning that they do, and by recognizing improvement in, for example, how well they're understanding opportunities, or how well they're understanding your customers, or how effective they are at positioning the Vantive solutions and your value proposition and so on. being able to do that, you actually shorten that cycle and with the customers and how effectively they're able to do that. And what happens is you can reward those incremental improvements, and it helps you drive a deeper belief and more change. So the next thing, obviously, we have to do is integrate it with the tools you have, but not just integrate it as far as saying just put some verbiage in there and throw it at it, but we've actually got to use the tools to help the salespeople do a better job. And you'll see that as we start to go through some of these tools. But first, I want to quickly take you through the methodology itself. And before we get into that, are there any questions?
Hey, Bob, are you back on the line?
I am.
So for the Vantiv sellers, the core program is things centered around prospecting. So for Ken's folks, they may argue we don't prospect. We have existing accounts. So it's interesting, when we worked with AT&T, we called it the science of prospecting. And their relationship management team came back and said, we don't prospect. So literally all we did was change it to the science of developing opportunities. Didn't change any of the intellectual property. Took them back through it. This is great. Way to change it. Good stuff. It's the same thing. I was an account manager for years. I had one of the largest healthcare chains. Actually came from AT&T. 40 hospitals, and I would have said I don't have to prospect, but you do. You're calling on multiple people within the accounts. So the science of prospecting, then science of qualifying and negotiating and handling objections and presenting, and it starts off in that library itself, and this is where they go to. And like I said, it's not that we don't put them through class anymore. We do. We would recommend more of a kickoff to the key points and getting that ownership guarantee bought off on them and putting them directly into the library itself. And as we move into the science of prospecting, a couple of key concepts here. One is to know what you're actually prospecting for. We think our goal is to uncover a whole bunch of new opportunities and get lots and lots of meetings. And actually a meeting with somebody who's not going to buy something is far worse than no meeting at all, because it deludes the seller into thinking they're doing something productive when they're not. And in fact, it keeps them from being time-wise, from actually spending time with somebody who might buy something for them. So your sellers, they'll learn how to do things like identify the ideal profile for specific Vantiv types of products and services. And the ideal customer profile is a tool and a methodology that's going to enable us to do this. And a very simple 6-step process that, once completed, gives your sellers a list of capabilities they're not selling, a clear list of problems it solves, characteristics of an organization that would cause them to care about those problems, as well as potential target contacts and lists of questions to ask them. So we focus a lot on gathering information so that we know where we have opportunities and where we don't, and then on using that information to show the customer or prospective customer the problems that they have, because people will do more to avoid pain, especially in an economy like this, but in general, they'll do more to avoid near-term pain or remove some existing pain than they will to pursue some future benefit. So for example, if we've got a particular like a productivity or security issue, and we know that this solution is going to enable prospects in the organization to operate more efficiently, we don't promise them that if they implement the Vantiv solution that they'll find some massive benefit down the road. We'll talk about what it's costing them today in terms of operating less efficiently than they could be, because that's more compelling than talking about future benefits. So on this slide, we continue talking about the science of qualifying, and I'm sure you guys have seen this a million times. One of the issues the reps face is that they're not clear on exactly what information they need in order to fully understand an opportunity. So they come back having talked with the customer, and they may put their confidence that they're going to close the business at, say, 80%. And then later on, they're shocked when they find out they didn't get it because of something they didn't know or something they could have known earlier on. And what we're doing, by the way, is we're not just giving individual people additional skills from which they can draw. We're drawing on and establishing a common and shared methodology inside the organization. And one of the best examples I can give you is really from the first day of the class. We actually have people in the class do a role play. So we'll pick a group, say 2 or 3 people to represent an account team. The instructor will be, or your instructors would be the customer. And this is the most unrealistic sales call in the universe, because we give them truthful answers to every question they ask. So no matter what they ask, we will give them the exact correct answer. And then we tell the rest of the group, you're on the call too, but you're just taking notes. So once we do that, we then go through a debrief and say, okay, from your perspective, what's your probability of winning this call or this sale based on the information you've gathered? And it's a crazy thing, guys. It's anywhere from 10% all the way up to 99%, yet they all saw the same exact call. And the problem is they're all working from a different group of information objectives. There's not one commonly held set of information objectives they're after. And they're not measuring it against one set of information objectives, which is why they're all coming up with different prospects and probabilities of winning. So we take them through 9 very specific information objectives that you see up on the screen, everything from business state and gaps. And I'm not going to go through each one of these, but we would define state and gaps as the current condition of the organization and any differences between where they are now versus where they want to be. Things like their goals, their plans, their processes, their strengths, and so on, and the impact it has on the organization, and is there any gap between where they are now versus where they want to be. And what that does is it starts to drive a discussion around business drivers, not technology. Every one of your competitors, and I would actually venture a guess that a lot of your reps are going in talking about products, features, and benefits. And the problem is it creates this perception of sameness in the industry that forces the buyer to make a decision on price. So the only thing I will define there, as you're seeing, is the PSCF, that's product support company and finance. So what do they have today, or what criteria will they use for the product? What criteria will they use to make a decision on the support, the company they want to do business with, and also the financial criteria. So we define and implement a very well-defined, logical, repeatable process to qualifying those opportunities so that the rep can actually measure very objectively where they are, what they know versus the target information they're after. And we talked about this with the state and gaps, but as you see the visual that you see up there on the screen right now, we call that the business foundation wheel. And it helps your people get a very clear visual representation of how businesses operate, from the vision, which is at the center of the organization. I know you can't see it well, all the way out to their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the second reason they don't do a good job is they don't have a strong questioning model. They know that they should have information for goals, and maybe sometimes they do get information on goals, but they don't know what to do with the answer once they get it. So we teach them a model. In this case, we call it the DIG model, description, impact, and gap. And it's a very easy model for them to follow so that they become really proficient and conversational at gathering information about the customer's business. But the other thing we've got to do is get them to be able to use the information. So unfortunately, in some cases, what they'll do is they'll ask meaningful business questions. And if they see a clear impact, I don't know, like the customer says, well, one of our biggest challenges is we have domestic and international travelers, and they get over to Europe and they don't have cards with chips in them, so they don't have pins either, and it becomes a problem. So, I guarantee any Vantiv sales rep who hears that is going to ask follow-up questions. It's your sweet spot. You know what to do there. If, on the other hand, the customer says, our biggest challenge right now is the rise in fuel costs. Well, the Vantiv sales rep here thinks to themselves, I don't know anything about fuel costs, so I'm going to move on. But one of the things we teach the salespeople with Axiom is every single thing that's given to them, everything they learn about the customer's business is valuable if we understand how it's impacting key areas. And that's that PEERS acronym you see, how it's impacting things like their productivity and efficiency, how it's impacting revenue and expense, how it's impacting their image or their safety and security or their stability. So we teach them in that questioning model to figure out what areas that's being impacted. So the salesperson in the Axiom environment, when we're talking about fuel costs, wants to know how it's impacting the organization. So they're going to ask, what impact is it having on the business? And in this case, the customer says, well, it's driving up our operating expenses. So the Vantiv Axiom trained salesperson knows that while he or she may not have a Vantiv solution that specifically addresses fuel costs, they can position solutions that will address operating expenses. Because this ties into that first thing I talked about, where business ops and training and technology, they may be looking at Vantiv solutions just like you're looking at training solutions, but really it's about solving some business issue, which may be an operating expense, maybe a revenue issue, maybe an image issue. So we know that if we talk about those things, that it doesn't necessarily have to align with fuel costs in this case, but a solution that could in fact drive down operating costs. Make sense? All right, I'm going to take a second to breathe and drink. Next is one of my favorite sections, and that is the criteria section, and helping uncover, even shape differentiating criteria. So what we do here in the class is we roll out an exercise where we get them to list out everything the customer says they need in terms of the product, then the support, and then the company. And we get things like reliability, scalability, flexibility, and so on, mobility. And the catch here is that while it's good information, it's not differentiating criteria. We recently did a webinar on needs satisfaction selling, and it's far too overused. You probe for all the buyer's needs, you uncover the needs, and then you come back with a solution that addresses those needs. But let's face it, guys, your customer doesn't have time to be talking to a prospective vendor that can't meet their needs. If we couldn't meet your initial needs, we wouldn't be in the room right now talking to you. So everybody goes in being able to meet the needs. If we all go in talking about how we can address the needs better than everybody else in terms of the product, the sport, and the company, we drive the buyer to make a financial decision because we all look the same. And it's not like your competitor is going to come in and say, oh, yeah, PCI compliance. Oh, no, we suck at that. We don't do it very well at all. That's right, we don't do it. So you should go talk to Vantiv. No, they're going to come in and say, we do it better than anybody. And you're going to come in and say, we do it better than anybody. So now the customer is looking at 4 vendors who all say, in terms of the product, support, and company, we do it better than everybody else. Okay, well, they all meet the need. They apparently all meet it well. Let's buy the cheapest one. That's a commodity. Water's pretty much the same. I'll buy the cheapest water, depending it doesn't have dirt in it, right? So we help them create a different questioning model. That's called DICE. And the neuroscience guys, one of the biggest issues we get with the adult learners is too many acronyms. But then when I come back and say, what is DICE? Oh, that's description, impact, criteria, and evidence. Oh, what do you use that for? Well, uncovering meaningful criteria for the product, support, and the company. So it sticks with the people in their heads. So the buyer's needs, don't get me wrong, you have to uncover those. That's the first step. But we have to go past that and uncover the criteria that they'll use to make the decision, and DICE is the methodology we use to use that. So next is, once we've qualified, we need to present, right? And the Vantiv salesperson who comes back with your full solution, not just one product, but a full solution as they get to this omni-commerce scenario, knows that certain characteristics of that solution is going to, in this case, as we continue with this example, is drive down operating expenses. So we don't start off the presentation by discussing all the features and future benefits they'll get if they go through the pain of acquiring a Vantiv solution, but the existing pain of not having the Vantiv solution today. And we don't just say, well, we've got capabilities in our solution that are going to cut operating expenses. We say, Chris, you said earlier that one of the biggest challenges managing your business right now is rising fuel costs. And while we don't have a specific solution that's going to impact rising fuel costs, what we are going to talk to you today are 4 other ways that we can come to you with a Vantiv solution across our enterprise and show you ways that you can lower your operating expenses, which may offset the impact that the rising fuel costs are going to have on your organization. That is exponentially more powerful than saying, here's what you said you need, here's our product, here's the feature, here's the benefit. So it really teaches your people to gather information and then leverage that information and putting the right solution in front of them, and then communicating in that way when we present the solution that the Vantiv solution is really differentiated because your competition didn't know that that was a key business issue because they don't care about rising fuel costs. And that perception is that the customer has of you is that you're highly focused on that, you're customer-centric with your solution, and you're differentiating yourself by leveraging that multidimensional listening and not just focusing on pitching a product, but building a solution that really delivers meaningful business to their business. So next, and quickly, we move on to handling objections and negotiating. It's a little crazy here. We have lots of salespeople that don't understand the difference between an objection and a question, and they don't have a clear methodology for how to handle it. So they get to the end of the process and they fumble around when this really should just be a continuation of the dialogue. So we're going to teach them how to identify what the customer's true concerns are, how to quantify where they are relative to that, and determine the real objection that would have on that concern would have on the decision. We're going to show them how to set that concern aside and see where they really stand, because in some cases the concern isn't an objection to moving forward. In some cases it's a smokescreen. In some cases it's one of many objections, or in some cases we may not have actually proven anything to them and there is no objection, they just want to get rid of us. So we're going to teach them how to focus on identifying what the real issue is. Is it a true objection, or do they just want us out of the room? And then how to focus in with the customer and determine together what could be done to resolve the situation from their perspective, and how to make this a workshop where they can work together to determining whatever they can do to resolve the customer's objections. And this works from anything from your price to they don't like the color of your tie. It gets back to that win fast, win slow, lose fast, lose slow. If I can quickly understand, is this just a smokescreen? We're not going to have a basis for doing business, and I can go home and see my son catch the earlier flight. I want to do that. No offense to anybody in the room, right? But there are more important things than business, and we don't want to waste time. So that's a very quick overview of the science of selling for the sellers. For the sales managers and the sales leadership team, we still have a process, and like all of our Axiom programs, you've got the framework, which in this case we call GUIDE, and I'll explain what that is in a second, which is the roadmap to performance structured sales coaching, and then the methodology and how to apply those tactical skills to support the process, and then the reinforcement tools, which is our native Salesforce applications, and supporting that moving forward. So what you see in front of you is pretty self-explanatory. The G is setting goals. Then we uncover gaps. identify the root cause, define corrective action, and then evaluate performance. And it's the same 5 things that all good coaches do. Urban Meyer. So we're in Ohio, right? So I'm guessing we have some Buckeye fans here. I'm not. I'm going to drive the hour and a half and see my brother after this, who played for Ohio State. I'm from Florida originally. I'm a Gator fan, but that's nothing to brag about right now at all. Even Cincinnati's got a better team this year than Florida. So, but all good coaches do the same 5 things. They all uncover and establish goals. They figure out what the gaps are. They identify a root cause. They then define some corrective action and then evaluate it. But I'm going to tell you, sales coaching doesn't happen a whole lot. We've got a whole lot of sales counters in sales management. So people who look at the performance at the end of each month and tell the rep, yep, you didn't make your numbers, do better. But they're not able to tell the rep exactly where they missed their number, why they missed their number, and then provide them with some meaningful coaching to help the rep get more skilled or more knowledgeable in those areas. So instead, what we do is send the same rep armed with the same skill and knowledge back into the field, and we expect a different result. So if we don't solve that issue, it doesn't matter what methodology you bring in, it's not going to work. So coaching is critical. And the cool thing is this means, too, that managers don't have to become trainers. One of the reasons managers don't coach is we make it nearly impossible for them to do so in the time that they have. We put it on their shoulders to create the tasks, to create the follow-up plans, to create all the assignments and the supporting documentation. And they don't have time to do that, so they don't. And instead, you just get the same behavior, which produces the same results. So they can actually coach if they want to.
Can I pause you there for a second?
Yeah.
I just want to do a quick time check. So we got about 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I'm interested in seeing the Salesforce piece.
I'm going to jump into it right now. Very good call. You're my straight man.
Any questions from the phone line while we're paused here? Candy Crush.
No, I don't have any.
You need to update your pitch, by the way. They don't play Angry Birds anymore. Everybody plays Candy Crush.
Yeah, I've got the addiction, but I'm stuck on. My wife's on like level 300. I'm on like level 65.
It's funny you said as we roll into 2012 earlier, and I was like, "Whoa,
Is that
2 years back!"
14?
Like,
Yeah,
man.
really? I was thinking 14 in my head.
I
was
just
like,
I'll drive
2012.
right here.
Yeah. That's
Are you guys seeing the?
Whoa,
Are you seeing the Salesforce.com
Oh, it's familiar.
application?
No, we see your desktop.
Okay, is it a beautiful little boy?
Let me see Ted Guzman.
Okay, so I'm logged in as a VP. So I'm at the top of the food chain here for the sales group. The rest of it should look pretty standard to what you're seeing in a typical Salesforce.com instance. So I'll go over to opportunities and let me go into recently viewed. I have one I like to use. Here it is, Smith Properties. So a rep creates a new opportunity. And come on, there we go. Still not showing everything, is it? Oh, that's a good start.
If you click, can you expand in the corner up there?
Yeah, but it's still not showing the whole screen. There we go. Better. I'm going to do it one more time. Undo what James just told me to do for a second. And see if I can now expand the screen down. Getting closer. There we go. Okay, so let me scroll down quickly to the bottom. So this is what you should be used to seeing. This is the core raw Salesforce data. That's not going anywhere. And keep in mind, we're in Salesforce. We haven't gone anywhere. This is not an app that has APIs that hook into it. We want them to use your system that you're already paying for and not have to go elsewhere. So here, I can see very quickly up top kind of the health and well-being of the account. I have the opportunity, how much it is, what stage it's in, how long it's been there, how long till it closes. From a management perspective, how old is it? How long has it been since they've been in last and updated? And then the win probability, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Right now, they got a 40% chance of winning. This coach tab that you see here, only the sales manager or the sales leader or somebody in a coaching capacity would see that. So if I'm sitting here with, in this case, Monica, and I wanted to have a coaching session and a one-on-one, I could go right into that from here. She wouldn't see that. But here in the drop-down, I see all the different evaluators and the relationships. And by the way, they come from the class and the library into the app, seeing all the information they just learned. So here I've got Christina Smith, who is a CFO, and we make it as simple as possible. Drop downs. We told you about the different levels of evaluation: company, product, support, finance. So in this case, we've got her listed as a financial evaluator. The CC is a coach or champion. And this is all tying into information within Salesforce. Let me cancel out of this real quick. If I want to add a new evaluator, I'm pulling from contacts that are in the account that are in Salesforce, so it's all there integrated. So back to Christina, it's showing her as Axioms an alternative, and these are some of the different alternatives that they're looking at. And once again, all system driven. Then over here, I pick the level of influence she has. So as the CFO and the financial evaluator, that's a pretty significant amount of influence. She holds the purse strings. So I have her listed as a 6, the ultimate decision maker. And then I hit save. Now here's an interesting thing. We've seen from working with just thousands upon thousands of sellers, if you don't have a coach or a champion within the account, it significantly lowers your opportunity to win. So if I listed her as also a coach champion, I want you to watch what happens to that win probability in the upper right-hand corner. We've taken the forecasting out of the rep's hands because they're typically one of two types of reps. They're either legends in their own mind and they forecast everything high, or they want to fly under the radar and sandbag and they forecast everything low. That doesn't help you. So we have proprietary mathematical algorithms that, based on the information they input in here and all throughout down here and everywhere else, it will create this win probability up here. So it flattens out the forecasting, makes it much more accurate, and really takes the stress off of you as a sales leader trying to figure things out. So if I come down here, I want to show you real quickly, and in each area you have pluses and minuses. So if I had these decision stages here, and let's say I knew that the proposal and implementation December 13th was bad for us. Let's say I knew that we could not get it until February. I could click here and make that a minus, saying that that's a negative impact. And what you'll see now is my win probability has gone down. So we can systemically work through and fine tune and tweak the probability based on each function. But what you also see here are the danger zones. The system has gone in based on the information that this rep has put in and created a bunch of danger zones rather than them having to figure it out. So I can see here that Jim Leonard is in a product technical evaluator role, but down here in criteria for the product, I don't have Jim Leonard listed. So up top, I've said, hey, this guy's a product evaluator, but down in the criteria for the product, we don't know what his criteria is going to be. So that's a danger zone, something we should know. I can add these manually. So all the native stuff that's in Salesforce I can use. I can also then go in as a manager or even as the rep. I can create the typical tasks that are within Salesforce.com themselves. I can assign this to a rep and say, hey, you need to go in and get this information. And it's all going to be, I don't know what you guys use. We use Outlook, so it's all natively integrated into Outlook tasks, as well as Salesforce.com itself. Let's go back to, we're going to start, where we go. And then it's all systemically in there. All the activities are saved. Everything's there. So I can log calls just like you do today, events, tasks. Our Outlook is integrated. So this event that we're having today, this meeting, shows up under the account of Vantiv in the events that have happened. So there's a record of all this has gone on. So just real quick, I want to show you the business state and gaps here. This is the stuff we talked about, things like their plans and their goals. And you can see the different pluses and minuses. Each one of these has been tweaked. Perhaps this goal negatively impacts our ability to win. I can also make that positive. Go back up here, and now you'll see that the win probability will change. In this case, it's already changed before we got up there. Oh, there it goes. So it's tweaking it constantly. And now let's say in a persistent learning environment, I don't remember what this is. So what do? Well, in a typical thing, you've got to go back to your book, open it up, pull a CD. Well, now I click on the help icon. It opens up a contextual learning session right here that's got all this information on what state and gaps are, what the business state and gaps are, Over here, if I click on this, it's going to have a video that shows me specifically within the application how to do that. And then if I still am not clear, I can scroll down and see what learning is available. And it's going to show me that for this, I've got how businesses make decisions. If they click on that, for the sake of time, I won't do it. It will open up that learning library. And by the way, that can be hosted on your LMS or our LMS. It doesn't make a difference to us. And it can be integrated with your product training too, by the way, as well as all the other stuff you're doing. And it can take them right into a quick 15, 20-minute learning session so that they can go, and then they quickly just go right back to where they were and finish their work. Make sense? So you have those 9 information objectives we talked about. The current scenario, what they have today, how they're being supported, what they're paying for it, criteria for the product to support the company, their financial criteria, what we call commonalities, their decision history, all there. And then as the coach, I can go into that success plan we talked about. I'm going to select this one. So I can see that Kelly, and this is the team one, she has a $15 million objective. So this is a sales director I'm looking at. I can see where she is relative to her target. I can see day by day. If I scroll along here, I want to see what happened on Friday, August 30th. It tells me how many new opportunities, new proposals. But I want to go down and look into the people themselves, into the coaching tool. By the way, see, it's showing that as a team, they're at 25% of their probability of finishing out the year. So now I'm going to go down to the rep level. Let's go into Patty.
This is all great, but going back to what you originally said, adoption being the issue, it doesn't do anything if they don't use it. So.
Well, the beautiful thing here is they don't use it typically. I'm not talking about your organization, once again, Truth in Lending, but they don't use it because they're not getting coached on it. And when they don't get coached on it, they don't see a reason to use it. They also see Salesforce.com as a tool that doesn't benefit them because it's not showing them anything. So you look at things like those danger zones. Now you have a system that's telling you, hey, Ken, you're not going to win this deal based on these 5 things. Fix these 5 things. Your probability of winning just went from 37% to 87%. So it's driving them to remove those things that helps improve their ability to win the business because information defines opportunity. Our ability to win and manage the deals based on the information we put into the system. And unfortunately, most people say, well, it's not in Salesforce, it's not an opportunity. Well, great, you're going to get tons of opportunities. It's going to be garbage information. So once they start to see that the information they're putting in is actually helping them close business, then they want to be in it. Once they have a system that they can go through a persistent learning model and actually get to learning that can help them use the system better, they want to be in the system. And then once the coaches have the ability to go in and see what they're looking at from this perspective, the coaches can then start to actually fix things on a regular day-by-day, minute-by-minute basis. And here's that sales success plan I talked to you guys about. Here I can see that this guy, Tony Mendez, is going to miss his number. He needs to hit 1 point. Actually, I tweaked this last night, so it's all messed up. But his objective is 1.3, and he's actually going to blow that out. But right now he's at 746,000. So I can pin this stuff, and I can say, you know what? Here's the problem. Your average sale value, if you just tweak that by 10%, it starts to change the things like your closing ratio. If we increase that just by a few percent, and your proposal ratio, and it starts to change where they have to be to make their number, and the rep starts to see minute by minute, section by section, how they need to plan to make that happen. And then I can coach. In this case, I clicked on coach, and I can sit down now with I'll just use Ken as an example and say, well, Ken, here's the problem. You don't have enough opportunities. That's the gap, or that's the goal. I click through, and it creates a whole decision tree here, and I'll do in 30 seconds or less, and I can start to ask the rep questions. Well, what's the problem? I start asking the questions. I identify, well, he's not having enough prospecting activity. So he's not spending enough time on that. Click on that. I start asking more questions, and I start identifying, well, they lack the skill to effectively prioritize these activities. And then here's the cool thing, and I'll finish with this. It starts to create and tell me what I can assign him specifically for that problem in the learning library. And once I do that, I can go back into his assignments, and now they're there in Salesforce. If you have it integrated in Chatter, it's all there, and so on and so forth. So unfortunately, we got started pretty late, so I can't go into too much detail on this because I know you guys have other things going on. We can demo the apps anytime you guys want to see them.
So you've got Axiom developers that create this?
Yes, it's all in-house. We have an entire development team for this. It's a managed package. So basically, if you said we have 300 sellers, you'd give us your organizational ID. We'd go to Salesforce, get that, send you a URL. There's not a whole lot of customization. It takes about 25 minutes to install the whole package. It's a very simple process. It's not on the App Exchange because it's not a $5 app that you can download and one person can install. But we'll be up on the App Exchange November 1st just for visual purposes. Ken, have a question? Okay.
Anybody on the phone lines? Any questions?
No, but I do have a statement, so and I think James, you made a statement today that it's about adoption. I think